Was it Mother's Day or your birthday?
Well, what we celebrated on the day was Mother's Day. Celebrated my birthday the day before. It's a real mishmash in the middle of May here. My sister and I have birthdays 2 days apart. So now in our adult lives, as kids, we tried not to celebrate them together because you'd get jealous of the other one and whatnot. You wanted your own thing. Now that we're adults, we either don't celebrate it or celebrate it together. And then on Mother's Day, we celebrated our mother, which I think was the right move.
Right. So just quickly to catch everyone up, hold the mustard. You just turned 35.
35, mid-30s. I can now run for president, I believe, Goo. That's the biggest thing about 35. Actually, it might be 40 for president. I forget. It might be 35.
I thought it was 70. Oh, that's fucking hot political joking right there. Charged.
This is it, right? You get to 40 and then you're officially old. There's nothing more to celebrate. Half of 100, I guess you could celebrate, and retirement. Those are the only two things I have left to celebrate in life is half of 100 and retirement.
I guess the two biggest things here is number one, yes, I am recording in a closet. And number two is because we are doing X-Men 97 at the end of this week. In honor of your birthday, we've already discussed this once. We'll be doing 8 Mile at the start of next week.
Didn't we? We got like 4 movies coming out this month, Gil.
We agreed on 8 Mile for your birthday.
I don't know if we did, but I'm fine with that.
Yes. Yes.
One, goo, 3, yeah. Goo. Jaws 3. Goo. King of Queens. Goo. Meryl Streep. Goo. Entertainment.
I'm Goo.
And I am Mac.
And we are the Mac and Goo program. We bring you monkeys on horses.
Yeah, we bring you interspecies friendship today. Here on the podcast, we've been talking movies for roughly, 7 years now?
7, 8 years.
And the original trilogy here of the Planet of the Apes sort of came before Goo and I were full-blown. Let me rephrase that in English for
Let's start from the beginning. I'm Goo.
This trilogy of movies really came before Goo and I were a full-fledged movie podcast. The third and final installment came when we were talking movies, but I don't know if you had seen either of the first two at that point, so you weren't super into it the way I was. Now that we have 7 years to look back on that original trilogy, and I think it was 2011 or 2012 for the first movie, history's looked back on this pretty good because at the time, when Matt Reeves took on the second movie in that franchise, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, he was, I won't say a relatively unknown, but not nearly where he is today. And it was this second and third movie that sort of propelled him to the point where he is today, where he was doing the Batman and is a household name at this point. So I think these movies are criminally underrated. And now with, almost a decade that's passed since, people are starting to finally appreciate them for what they are.
Yes, the reboot trilogy that started with the Franco movie, and then we got Dawn. I'm sorry, was Dawn the first one?
Rise is the first one.
The titling is a little bit off of what it should be. But Dawn and, yes,
War.
I'm already having an issue here.
Rise, Dawn, War.
So shut up. The 3 movies in general, though, I think is an awesome trilogy. While I don't think that the Franco one on its own is necessarily great, it is a great starter to a franchise. Because the next 2 movies, I absolutely love. I love those last 2 Planet of the Apes movies, where you have the perfect conclusion to those movies. But like we see here, we can jump 300 years into the future and pick up those same themes.
Yeah, what that first movie did in 2011 was establish the character of Caesar and really make him a character we were rooting for, which is so necessary.
He learns from the Knights of, he learns from Ra's al Ghul. He goes, he trains, and then he becomes ready to defend the world against other monkeys.
Well, it's such a necessary entry because it's a movie essentially pitting apes versus humans. And as a human, you're naturally inclined. Well, I think you and I are naturally inclined to hate the humans, but most other people are going to be rooting for the humans. So
but it's not only apes versus humans, it's apes versus apes. It's still
and humans versus humans too.
Yeah.
It's actually pretty deep, and I think
Mhm.
this movie actually does a great job at getting into some very human things told through the eyes of the ape landscape in this world. Goo,
Mhm.
this movie was made on a budget of 160 million.
Wait, what is the title of this movie?
Oh, right, Goo. This installment, the fourth installment in the Planet of the Apes franchise, is titled Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. And Goo, this movie was made on a budget of 160 million, which maybe you at home don't quite understand or grasp that number. To put it in perspective, Avatar: The Way of Water, another movie that's made almost exclusively in CGI, 460 million. So kudos to the fucking the movie makers here. It's incredible that you can put out that high quality of CGI for almost 2.5 hours at less than half of the cost of Avatar.
At any point, did you not like the animation or the CGI?
No, there wasn't any point that took me out of it, and it's pretty incredible that it was as seamless as it is, and it almost helps them more when the humans aren't in it, so you don't have anything to like contrast it against.
Yeah,
But
right.
I was really blown away by how good the visuals were in this movie.
Yeah, it's seamless from the last one, and obviously, we change directors, we lose Andy Serkis, who is probably the best mocap guy around, but no Serkis, no problem.
At the box office in opening weekend, 56.5 million domestically, which was more than double what or about double what the Fall Guy made last week, which is
Mhm.
stunning. I don't know. That's I guess a conversation for another
People
day.
don't care about movie stars anymore, they care about monkeys.
Worldwide made 129 million, which is almost its budget in the first weekend, which is incredible. So this movie is set to make buku bucks. Goo. This is a PG-13 action adventure in sci-fi with a runtime of 145 minutes, so 2 hours 25 minutes. It is long. I thought they did a pretty good job with the pacing. There wasn't any real lulls. Now there's some lesser moments, some more somber moments, but
Yeah.
I thought the pacing, especially in the third act, was great, so it keeps you in it. On Roddy T's, 81% from the critics, 79% from the audience. So a little lower than I anticipated, but I will fully admit this isn't on the level, I think, of the last two movies.
This movie is it's just simpler. Like, they have to bring it back to its base to then build it back up for the next 2 movies.
Yeah, and you say that in a good comparison there. Rise of the Planet of the Apes, the original one, or the first one in this franchise, 82% and 77%. So very
Yeah.
similar scores. The second movie, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the one that I think is the best of the three, 91%, 88%. War for the Planet of the Apes, 94%, 84%. On Metacritic, this has a 66. Rise has a 68. The second movie, Dawn, 79. The third movie, War, 82. So those
I
last
do
two
agree, though,
movies
that
really
I
cleaned up.
do think that Dawn is the better of the 3, or I mean, especially comparing I think that Dawn and War are say if we're looking at water,
Mhm.
those 2 have their head poking out, the other 2 have, like, their eyes poking out.
Well,
Like, they're still alive, but they might drown.
what the second one did so well is you sort of have humans versus humans, what we're talking about, and
Mhm.
apes versus apes. And then the third one, it's more human versus ape and less ape versus ape, human versus human. Although the end does conclude fantastically with a human versus human battle. But the whole Koba stuff that comes to a head at the end
Hope
of
is
the second one,
fantastic, yes.
like that's why I think that movie stands out above the other
That's
two.
what this movie doesn't have. It
Right.
doesn't have Koba, and don't get me wrong, and I have no idea what the monkey's name is, but he's good. I
Noah.
enjoy him as the no, so Noah is the good guy.
Yeah.
Wait, do you think Koba's the good guy in the other movie?
No, no. Are you talking about what are you talking about? The original three?
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
Well, Cesar,
Yep.
he's the good guy.
Yeah,
Koba's the bad monkey.
correct.
Yes, this movie does not have a Koba.
Yep. And I think it is setting itself up for a similar situation in the next movie or next couple movies because we
Mhm.
haven't had that inter-ape strife so much. Now, obviously, you get a king in this movie, but he's not very well established. He's sort of just brought in at the beginning of the third act, and he does a job, but
"Are
he doesn't
we
really mean much.
having a great day?" I love that. I love that, though.
Incredible job by that voice actor.
Incredible
Uh,
job by all the voice actors, by
yeah.
all the mocap people. I you really talk about it, like, I think stepping back into this world, you are always taken aback a little bit at the beginning by the talking apes.
Yeah, for
That's
sure.
just the natural feeling at looking at a monkey talking to you.
Hmm.
I know I'm joking around. Monkeys and apes aren't the same thing. I'm gonna do this the entire podcast. So, um, but once you get back into it, you're just in this world, and there's no issues here.
Yeah, you become immersed in it pretty quickly, and
Yes.
you just don't even second guess it at that point. Goo, this movie is written by Josh Friedman, who has a really, really interesting filmography so far, at least for what he's written. He did War of the Worlds back in '05 or '06, which I think is actually kind of underrated at this point. I like that movie. Black Dahlia, which sucked. Terminator Dark Fate, which sucked. And then he did Avatar The Way of the Water, so back up, took a few years off. And now this. So he's clearly been trusted with some major properties, and that is even more so what he's got upcoming is next year's Fantastic Four movie. So one of the biggest properties in the MCU is in the hands of this fella. He's also doing the fourth Avatar movie, and he was the creator of the Snowpiercer series.
He didn't do
TV
Avatar
series.
3. He's not gonna do Avatar 5 or 6 or 7.
Well, he did
He's just
two.
doing 4.
I don't think he's doing three, but
He's only doing the evens.
yeah. This movie is directed by Wes Ball, who I don't think anyone really knows. He did do the Maze Runner trilogy, which is getting rebooted. I thought the first Maze Runner was pretty good. After that, it kind of loses steam. So he's kind of a somewhat unknown director in terms of this type of movie making on this level. I had no issue with the direction here. And again, when you get something that's so digitally based, it's hard to like find issue with the direction.
Yeah.
Upcoming, he is doing the Legend of Zelda movie, so that's interesting, and something called Mouse Guard. So look forward to Mouse Guard if you
I wouldn't
like
mind
this.
mouse guarding my house. I have rodents.
Synopsis. Many years after the reign of Caesar, a young ape goes on a journey that will lead him to question everything he's been taught about the past and make choices that will define a future for apes and humans alike. Decent enough synopsis. Works for me.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
movie
no, yeah.
This movie stars Owen Teague as our protagonist, Noah. Very good job. I have no qualms, no issues with that. Freya Allen as our one real human character, May. That might have been the weakest part of the movie, if you ask me. If that's probably my most major criticism is her and her motivations and what's going on behind her character.
Maybe, but I love the interactions between May and Raka, but I also just love Raka.
Yeah, Raka was maybe the well, we'll get to that. We'll see if Raka made
If the
Lemonade.
shoe fits, if he's making lemonade, Raka is doing it all.
Actually, my two favorite mocaps or voice acting done in this movie is Kevin Durand as Proximus Caesar. This is the king we see primarily in the third act of the movie. He is just so big and bashful and intimidating. And as Goo mentioned, Peter McCann as Raka. It just really kind and nice, really warmed your heart. So I don't know who this actor is in real life, Peter McCann, but I just want to meet him and give him a hug. That character was so well written and so well performed. I really fucking enjoyed it.
Mac would give him a hug and just whisper into his ear, "I'm an orangutan." 'Cause I feel like you're picturing an orangutan. Would you give a hug to an orangutan?
Well, it was an orangutan.
No, I'm saying like, so I thought that you meant that you want to give the voice actor a hug.
Oh, him and the orangutan, sure.
I'd be afraid to hug a monkey. Really, any kind of ape. I don't want to, just because they can snap at any moment. We've seen all these movies.
I don't know. Coco the ape seemed pretty cool.
Guys, go on whatever we're calling our social medias right now. Tell us, would you hug an ape?
The other three characters you really need to know here are Lydia Peckham as Suna. That's essentially Noah's love interest. Travis Jeffrey as Anaya. That's like his best friend. And then William H. Macy is the second human here as Trevathan. He plays a real son of a bitch.
It was fine. It was fine.
Yeah, he was okay.
Yeah.
He was essentially doing his character from Shameless. If I don't know if you
So
watched
I
Shameless
guess if we're going to point out the big differences with this movie compared to the two better movies, it is you don't have that great standout bad guy, and the human stories aren't as compelling.
Yeah, in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, Jason Clarke is amazing as like the ape advocate, and Gary Oldman's amazing as like the son of a bitch human.
Yeah.
It's a good contrast here. In War for the Planet of the Apes, you don't really have the good human character. You have the mute little girl; she plays a part. But Woody Harrelson is great
Harrelson's
as like the colonel.
fantastic in it.
Yeah,
Though. He's
he's
awesome.
so good, right?
Yes.
Dude, let me do a quick timeline here of what happens in those first three movies, just to catch anyone up who hadn't seen those or hasn't taken the time to
The
do that.
stopwatch is on.
So this movie, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, is set roughly 300 years after the events of the original trilogy. Uh, the only thing that this world really knows of those events is that Caesar was like the first elder ape. He was the first leader, and they really have just heard tales about him, but they don't know for sure what happened, what took place. It's all been hearsay. In Rise of the Planet of the Apes, that takes place in this timeline over a 5-year period. And essentially, what happens in this movie is humans are searching for a cure for Alzheimer's. Primarily, James Franco is doing it because his father, played by John Lithgow, has Alzheimer's. He wants to cure it. An inadvertent effect of this drug is that it is making apes smarter. So Caesar's mother is the first successful test candidate with this drug. Caesar is the first born ape with this like enhanced brain, which is obviously the most notable thing from that. The latest version of the drug in that movie ends up being a flawed version of the drug, and it begins essentially a pandemic, a global pandemic, wiping out humans on a global scale. Um, an aside to that is Caesar, as a result of biting a human's finger off, which was pretty gruesome. He's like put in an institution with other apes and other quote unquote bad animals. He steals canisters of that drug and basically gives it to the rest of the apes he's with. They all become these pseudo enhanced apes, essentially creating a trickle effect that going forward, that next generation of apes are all going to be these enhanced apes. That movie ends with the apes going into the woods to set up their civilization, and human civilization essentially crumbling, being centered in just major cities. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes is set 10 years after the conclusion of that movie. Um, and the apes have a bustling civilization in the woods of San Francisco, and there's a human colony surviving like in downtowns of some major cities. So San Francisco is what we're dealing with in this one. Caesar, still the leader of the apes, is basically trying to cultivate a peaceful existence between human and ape. However, there's this faction of apes led by Koba, who we were just talking about, who hate the humans, do not want to coexist. They'd rather kill all of the humans. So in this movie, Cuba Gooding Jr.,
Cuba Gooding Jr.
Koba frames the humans for Caesar's death and burning down their village. Ultimately, obviously, Caesar remains alive. But between Koba fueling up the apes and Gary Oldman's character fueling up the humans, they're destined for a violent conflict. The only people that end up stopping it are Caesar and Malcolm, played by Jason Clarke, who does a great job in that movie. Unfortunately, at the end of that movie, Gary Oldman's character, Dreyfus, had already contacted a militia, which ends up being led by Woody Harrelson. And we see at the end of that movie, Caesar kills Koba, and the apes have to prepare for conflict with the humans. War for the Planet of the Apes, set 2 years after that movie, sees this militia group tracking down Caesar and his group of like enhanced apes through the state of California, wherever they're going. The militia ends up killing Caesar's wife and one of his kids, and then basically sets Caesar off looking for revenge. So he goes after the militia for basically the rest of the movie. During this movie, we learn that there is now a mutation of this simian flu that leaves humans mute, and it is essentially, it's not killing them, it's reverting them back to like caveman age. So it's flipped on its head. It's ironic. Now the apes are the smart ones, the humans are the ones that can't speak. We learn there's also factions of humans that have developed. So this militia group is out to wipe out apes, or enslave them, but more so wipe out all the infected humans with the simian flu. And then there's other human groups that are trying to cure it. So they're button heads this whole time, which leads to the conclusion of that film, which Woody Harrelson ironically comes down with that simian flu. He unalives himself. That militia gets bombed by the other human factions, and then Caesar aids that by detonating some explosives, causing that avalanche, wiping out that militia. At the end of that movie, we see Caesar and his group of apes arriving at this oasis that they had set out for at the beginning of that movie. And Caesar was mortally wounded during that battle. He's able to rest peacefully. So now that brings us to 300 years later. Here we are for this movie.
Now, let me ask you a question now these movies always did pretty well financially, but never got into the billions of dollars. The quality of these films are great, but they aren't talked about like some other blockbusters of the time.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, it's really interesting to think about because I think it's a way to introduce some really dark concepts to a somewhat younger audience. Obviously, there's humans in there, but using the apes makes it a little more palatable for people, I think. So you might be able to have a deeper conversation with a 10, 12, 13-year-old kid. It's probably like B level for blockbusters, right? Because it's still making, I think the last two made close to 500 million,
Oh,
something
they
like that. So,
consistently made very good money, just
yeah,
never hit like that next level.
right, right. So no, it's interesting to talk about because the quality, like the baseline level of these movies are really really good. Now maybe they'll keep picking up. This had the second biggest opening of the four movies so far, and I think it's going to continue to make a lot more money. But it's a good question to ponder because I think they're really well made and really well written, and the things they're dealing with is very human. It just happens to be apes on screen.
All right, Mac, should we get to our Decagon?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, Mac. Fun factor. Um, the special effects led to, I think, some very good, fun visual things, but I'm not necessarily sure if any of the storylines were fun.
Yeah, it's not outright fun. I
Yeah.
did enjoy Raka so much that I had fun
Yes,
when he was
Rocker
on
was fun.
screen.
Yeah.
I also felt like the tension was so good throughout the film that you have some good like heart racing fun, some good roller coaster type of fun.
Satisfactor, and I was very satisfied with obviously Caesar is no longer Caesar. I keep putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable here. But the character is obviously no longer with us. It's 300 years in the future, and he now only lives through stories told about him because these guys can't read. And we do have a character that does read to the apes, but it's misconstruing the teachings and the lessons that Caesar tried to give to his other apes. So it's the wrong interpretation
Yeah.
using the old stories that I think is satisfying because that is what connects them.
Yeah, and it's something that's happened dozens and tens and hundreds of times in human history
Yes.
is leaders looking for power misusing prior teachings and older leaders and what they said. So that is somewhat satisfying. Like
Those
you
who
said,
win the war get to tell the story.
yeah, exactly. That is a satisfying part of this movie. I
Yeah.
also thought the conclusion was like baseline satisfactory, kind of what you expected, but satisfying enough.
Borometer. No.
Yeah, it did a pretty good job of not being boring at all. Like I said, the pacing was quite strong. So it does lack the high end fun factor and satisfactor, but it also doesn't have any bore really in here. So it's just baseline a really, really good movie.
Halloween. Will this movie wane over time? And I kind of hope it does because I want the sequels to be better.
Yeah, I agree a bit with you here. If you look at it in context of the first three, I never really want to go back and watch that first one, but the other two are much more rewatchable. So maybe we're setting ourselves up for that type of situation here.
Aquator, it's better than 2017's Aquaman.
Faux show.
When life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. And I believe that everything that went into the character of Raka is delicious.
Delightful.
Yeah.
Absolutely delightful. Couldn't agree more. It came at the perfect time in the movie, and when that character exits the movie, that was like a good jumping off point too. It's just a really, really well thought out character, and it's I don't know. It's a great character, best character in the movie.
Pants Tent City. Excite Bike Mania. What in this movie got you going?
I really like so we've seen millions of movies like this now. We've even seen some this year, you have Dune. This dystopian type of future or past, however you want to look at it. And what revolves around that, how races and people develop society around that. I just like the way this is built, how the apes are like in a bronze age where humans were, 1,000, 1,500 years ago and now the humans are fighting just to stay alive to get back on top. I just really like the levels of both societies in this movie.
If the shoe fits is something that I think we're going to get rid of. I think we should move forward now with we're not monkeying around.
Although that said, I felt like Kevin Durant as Proximus Caesar was a perfect if the shoe fits
That's
character
old
for this
news.
movie.
That's old. We're not doing that anymore. Mac, I think that Wes Ball did not monkey around. He did not monkey around. He got the job done.
Agreed. Agreed.
We then move on to Mac's credit union.
Like I said at the top, I think it's an absolute achievement that this movie got made for 160 million, $300 million less than Avatar: The Way of Water. That's not to put down Avatar: The Way of Water. I'm sure they developed XYZ to make that movie. But the fact that this movie looks so great for $300 million less is fucking insane. It's
For,
really breaking my brain thinking about that.
for those of you tardy to the Mac and Goo party, we rate everything on a 40 hot dog rating system. And Mac, just once again, in this reboot franchise, another solid flick. I don't think it's as good as the previous two, but what they gave us here is still beautiful. The characters are still pretty fleshed out. And what I also like about this too is that with the start of the new trilogy in the reboot franchise, I wasn't attached to any of these characters quite yet. And I think that they knew this. So anyone was really on the board to be taken out. You didn't know who was going to be sticking around, who this trilogy was truly about. Granted, you can kind of put the pieces together, but anyone could go at any moment. I think that they have set themselves up for another solid trilogy, and I want to see what happens in the future. And just really, like I said at the top, it's the look of this movie. You're immersed immediately. You don't bat an eye at these talking chimpanzees. I got this at 33 hot dogs.
Wow, Goo. Wow, wow, wow. I'll tell you what, it's what makes us similar that makes us great. Goo, I'd say, again, to contextualize this, and we've never reviewed these three movies on the podcast, so just to give the folks at home a little bit of a peek, I think Rise of the Planet of the Apes, that 2011 movie, I think that's like a 32 dog movie, maybe 31. Good table setter, sets up Caesar really well. It's just a good leadoff entry into that franchise. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes to me is like a 38 dog movie. That movie blew my cock off. I really, really loved that movie. War for the Planet of the Apes is like 35, 36. Great, but not up to
If
that
they put
level.
that on the DVD cover for Dawn, blew my cock off. Dash back.
The third movie was a great conclusion, just wasn't quite as good as the second, in my opinion. This movie feels closer to the first movie than it does those other two. I really liked how it mirrored a lot of aspects of what has clearly gone on in human history. People finding relics or old scriptures, cave signs, and interpreting things in different ways, putting their own spin on it. People twisting original intentions of old leaders to sort of justify their actions in the present. That's a very human thing we've done in our whole entire history.
But also just not having the full story. And we'll get to that in a second in spoilers, but there's something that I think makes it even better. The fact that they didn't know something.
Right.
Yes.
Well, that's happened a ton of times in human history too.
Yeah.
And I love how they used that aspect of the story to connect it to the original trilogy with Caesar and what Caesar believed in that whole thing. That also meant that the viewer going into this movie didn't really need any knowledge from the prior three movies. It helps, but you didn't really need it. You just need to know Caesar exists, which is what they tell you in like a title card at the beginning. I thought they did a pretty good job of establishing Noah as our next protagonist. Not quite Caesar level, but good enough. I do feel like May was pretty weak, though, the human character. Now, I like the dynamic between her and Noah, and I like the dynamic boiling in the future between apes and humans. I just didn't care all that much for her character in this movie. So I guess I'm the same, Goo. 33 hot dogs. It is my number 3 movie of 2024. I think of 15 or 16. With only Dune Part 2 and The Fall Guy ahead of this. But it is sort of in a small little jumble of movies now. So it's like clearly below the top, but it's just a really solid movie. You really have to nitpick to not like things or not like this movie. It's just a very good entry.
Shall we spoil?
Let's get the spoilers.
Spoilers. I love them finding out that humans used to run the world.
Yeah.
And that apes, animals were, this sub-level of what humans were. And I'm just curious, like, how many of the apes knew this? Because William H. Macy's character is the one teaching Proximus Caesar about what the world used to be. And I
Mhm.
would imagine that he's going to leave some stuff out. He is going to cookie coat. He's going to decide what he learns. And he's not going to be like, oh, by the way, you know that humans used to put you guys in cages?
I actually don't think that's the case. I think that's why Proximus is so motivated to get into that vault because he knows he's got to get ahead of what's left of the
No, he wants
humans.
weapons. He
Yeah,
wants
to
weapons.
get
And that's
ahead of what's left of humans.
I also think no, so I think that he does have a general dislike of humans, but that's based off of the Caesar teachings that he misinterprets. But I think the funniest line of the movie and kind of gets into what he wants from that vault is when he sees Nova shooting the gun and he's like, "Are there more of those in there?"
Yeah, that's pretty good. No,
Yeah,
I actually I disagree with you there. I think he knows exactly what their fate is if they let the humans rise up against. So
exactly though.
yes, I do. And I think he's keeping it from the apes to sort of keep, camaraderie. I think he knows. And I think that's why he's so
Do you
motivated.
think that William H. Macy is selling out his own kind, telling this to Proximus Caesar so that he'll be kept around, but
100%.
all other humans will be taken out?
No doubt about it. Yeah, I think he's an absolute
Okay.
snake.
Okay, no,
That's
I can see that.
that's
Yeah.
my interpretation on it.
Okay.
Not that I'm 100% right, but that's how I saw
No, you wrote the movie.
it. uh Goo, the couple little notes here.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, speaking to what you're speaking of before I jump to that, the two scenes that really underscore what you're talking about is when Noah meets Raka in the airport and he sees the mural of humans and he's just like
Yeah.
blown away. And Raka doesn't really know, but he has an idea that humans flourished before. And then, of course, when they break into the vault, Noah and his two friend apes they're looking through the books and they see the apes in the zoo and they're like mind blown by this whole
What
thing.
is
So
this?
it's a good like base for what's gonna come. And obviously that'll mean more in the next couple
Also,
movies.
you knew that Raka was gonna die. You knew it. You were getting ready for it, and it still hurt.
Q, there's an audio post credit in this movie, audio only, featuring the voice of what we will assume is Raka. It sounds like Raka.
I was in the theater. I was like, "What is this?"
So I think it's implying he's still alive, which I hope so because it's such a
I
great
don't know.
character.
Also,
And
no,
the
I
and
but
the apes are gonna need that character going forward.
but I also think that movies like this or any franchise, you need to have characters that can be taken out at any moment. Like in this movie, I thought that Noah might die at any moment because really any of the apes could take over.
Sure. Yeah, I get what you're saying,
And
but
on it, it doesn't matter.
in this current state of the world, Raka is the only character that
Right.
like knows what he knows.
Like in the original trilogy, you knew that they needed Caesar.
Yeah.
In this one, you're like, I don't know if we need any of these, and anyone
No,
can
that's
step
true.
up to be the good ape or the bad ape.
That's true. No, and maybe that will set up this trilogy to sort of meet greater ends than the last one. That's
Like,
certainly
if
a
in the next
possibility.
movie, what happened to James Franco's character, which is, I believe he just died off screen.
Yeah.
If that happens to Noah, like at the beginning, they're like, oh, by the way, Noah's dead. I'd be like, all right, cool. Who's
Good
up
enough.
next?
Yeah, let's jump into the action here.
Noah went back to his home planet and died on the way back.
Okay, a couple fun things here. They call the human, they name the human Nova because that's the name of the young female character from War of
Yeah.
the Planet of the Apes. That's what Caesar calls that girl. So presumably over the last 300 years, that got passed down. That's why they call her Nova. It's also a nod to a character from the 1968 movie. The Caesar symbol that we see Proximus use, the circle with the like curved cross, and also we see it on Raka's necklace, as the shape of the attic window from the San Francisco home we see in the first movie, which I think is a really nice touch. Um, we see that May ends up being like a much bigger character than what she led on to both the audience and to the apes here. And at the end of this movie, she brings that hard drive she finds in the vault to another location, and it completes this like satellite uplink. Now,
So, did you like that when they asked her about it? She's like, "This will give humans a voice again," and I'm like, "Are they gonna cure?"
it'll teach humans how to
Yeah,
talk
so
again,
whatever it was.
basically.
Yeah, whatever it was, and you're like, "Is this?"
She also calls it a book.
Cure? So, but when she gets it, I'm like, it's kind of a MacGuffin there. It's kind of a like what is this giant fucking
Yeah.
floppy disk that she is grabbing? I do like that it was more satellite that humans can now speak to each other.
Yeah, so this unlocks a whole level of things we haven't really thought about in a while. Like what's going on with the humans other than the wild humans we see, the echoes, I guess, for lack of a better term. So once that satellite uplink is completed, we immediately hear this base call out, and like a base in the Midwest. I don't remember if it was Iowa, Idaho, Indiana, Ohio, some flyover state.
Ag, we get it. You know states.
One of those calls back, and you're like, all right, they're uplinked. So there's got to be multiple sites across the country with this like underground human community staying alive and rebuilding their society. So that's really interesting going forward. I liked May at the end of the movie more than I did most of the movie, just because she seems like a more badass character than what she was leading on. It's just, I don't know, I didn't love her for most of this movie. At the end of the movie here, we get obviously this fight scene between Proximus and Noah, which I thought was good enough. Like they call back with the Eagle song, like that was fine. It was like just satisfying enough that I gave it a pass.
Yeah, it was a little predictable.
Yeah,
Smidge.
for sure.
Yes.
I did just really like in general that they used birds. So for some reason, the bird, ape, and horse combination is badass. I don't know why. I just like that trio of animals. It really, really works.
I don't know why, but that just made me laugh. Just picturing Matt just being like, fuck, I would love to ride a horse while summoning my falcon.
But it's really interesting now too, because whether we agree on what Proximus knew or not, Proximus is now dead, and I don't think any other ape had access to the information being fed to him by William H. Macy there. And so now the only apes that know truly are Noah and the two friends. Let me get those names again. I keep forgetting. Suna and Anaya. So I
Mhm.
wonder what they do with that information going forward.
I also loved how broken down Anaya was. Like how
Mm.
just completely like out of character the character became when they became a slave.
Yeah, and it showed you like what happens there. It's sort of the
Just
fight or
broken.
flight stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people become broken and just fall into line. Other people want to revolt. It was a perfect 1-2
Yes.
combo there. I think that's it. I think that's
That's
all I
it.
really have for spoilers. I mean,
Yeah, wow.
it leaves off the franchise in a good spot with this looming conflict between apes and humans coming, and we now know it almost seems like the humans have an advantage now, Goo, because they're now talking on at least a countrywide scale, and the apes are going to be really segmented in their villages and their small little civilizations. And presumably the humans are going to rise up in the next one and sort of catch the apes off guard. I'm guessing.
Yeah,
And
but
so
Noah can build weaponry now though.
that's true. That's true. And they probably might have access to more things than we know. I don't know. There's a lot unsaid left at the end of this movie, for better or worse. But it's a really interesting spot because it seems to me that the humans will be able to somewhat sneakily rise up on what's left of the apes. But the apes don't really want to fight the humans. It doesn't seem.
It seems like they just want to be left alone, or at
Yeah.
least it seems like certain like tribes or certain like groups of apes want to just be left alone while some do want to conquer.
And it makes you call back to Caesar's goal at the beginning of this whole franchise is to have ape and human live side by side. And it seems like this franchise is going to build towards that with the sixth movie, but I don't know. Maybe there'll be 9 movies. Maybe there'll be another trio after this. They could go either way on it. It's going to be interesting to see. Like the next movie is going to really tell us how the rest of the thing's going to play out. But it left it in a really good spot going forward.
I mean, I think that by the end of this, it's gonna the apes will control the planet, and the final scene of this trilogy will be Charleston Heston landing his spacecraft and stepping out. Hopefully, by that time, they'll have a deal with his family to use his AI image, and we'll have some fun.
Yeah, they do have that little Easter egg in the James Franco movie of the space shuttle taking off. I hope they don't pay that off, though. I hope that's just there.
Pay
It's an
it
Easter egg.
off. Pay it off. This is sci-fi. Let's have some fun, Mac.
Sure, 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 sure.
Let's get into Maxac.
And Mac Zach could be anything. It could be a boat. And Mac, let's get into a new segment that we have here. I don't know if I like the title of this, but let's just play with it right now. It's called Shit Talk,
All
spelled
right.
TOK.
Yeah.
Is when the folks head over to our TikTok account and boom, roast us. Let's go to one of our videos that was posted a couple weeks ago, and it was Goo discussing how he loves how Casey Jones nonchalantly murders the Shredder with a garbage truck, and many of the people on there telling me, hey, Shredder's still alive in the sequel,
Hundreds
so
of
I
them.
don't know what you're talking about, which is completely true. But if you read the caption on the video, it says attempted.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
open your eyes, folks.
Come on, folks.
But I do love how Eric Gandy makes a great point on there. He says that Jones does say whoops, so it's accidental.
Yeah, it's not a murder. It's a manslaughter.
And then we get to the people. Jeff Froy said that I look like Jay Baruchel with Dane Cook's voice.
I don't think you have Dane Cook's voice, but Dane Cook has such a distinct cadence. That's really what makes Dane Cook Dane Cook.
Justin Garza, 134, so that I give off Anthony Jeselnik vibes.
You have the same tone as Jeselnik, but you're a much nicer human being than he is.
Thank you. And then Simon had the best one out there. He said that I look like Anthony Jeselnik dressed as Jay Baruchel for Halloween.
I don't even know. I don't even know where to. But it seems like that those two are common. You know what it is they both have the upright hair like you do, so people are just going to that.
There were several people that pointed at Dane Cook, Jay Baruchel, and Anthony Jeselnik. So
Yep.
I think it's just the hair.
I agree.
It's also the hockey jersey. I was wearing a hockey jersey. So the Jay Baruchel
you're Canadian
comparison
as well.
a little lazy. Well, Mac, I'm a white podcaster. I own hockey jerseys. We also have from one of our other TikToks, I believe it was the one where you said that Bullet Train is better paced than the Fall Guy because there's a train in it. And from Gargoyle Warner, he compared you. He said that you look like Carl from Aqua Teen Hunger Force.
Yeah, if you get the mustache and I had a tank top on that day, it's not too far off. That's for sure.
I want to say, like, he caught you on a good day, though. Like, you were wearing a tank.
And I hadn't shaved my head in a bit, too, so the sides.
Exactly. Like the shade, your mustache was just dirty enough that, yes. And I was like, I said it to my wife, and I showed her the picture. She goes, oh, that's kind of mean. I'm like, yeah, but look at Mac. And she goes, oh.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So that was our shit talk. Let's go to our TikTok. Boom, roast us. What do we care?
We
don't
content.
have friends. All right, Mac, where can the people find us?
You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at Mac and Goo Podcast, every other platform where you're Mac ampersand Goo. It's Mac Shift 7 Goo. That includes Facebook, Stitcher, TuneIn, Castbox, Spreaker, Google Play, iHeartRadio. More importantly, we are on we're on Spotify. More importantly, we're on Apple Podcasts. Get on there, rate, review, subscribe, 5 stars. If you do that, we'll get you a free Mac and Goo t-shirt from the folks over at Watertown Sportswear. That's watertownsportswear.com, expert screen printing and embroidery.
tpublic.com.
Church.
Once again, I am live right now from a closet at work. I am going to go ahead and try and resolve this soon.
You're working on it. You need a table. You need like a cart, a stand-up thing.
I need something. I'm sitting on a trash barrel right now.
It's not great.
Holding a microphone. I'm looking at puppets in here. Maybe next time you know what? Next time I'll break out one of the puppets.
It's kind of scary.
Yeah, there's lots of puppets in here. So check us out at the end of the week for X-Men 97. Tuesdays are Goose Days. I abuse kangaroos.
Bye.
Tim Burton.
Please flip the cassette over to side B to continue the adventure.